Hey everybody, I'm Finn McKenty. I'm the head of the music and audio channel here on CreativeLive. If you are new to CreativeLive, we are the world's leading online classroom for creative professionals. On the audio channel, we have classes in everything from songwriting to engineering, mixing and mastering with lots of artists that you may be familiar with, like Dillinger, Escape Plan, Converge, Periphery, Joey Sturgis, all kinds of folks like that making the records that you probably like. So if you want to learn more about that, head over to creativelive.com/audio and check it out. Watch all the free previews. Our guest for today is the internet's busiest music nerd. Now, Anthony, I want to ask how to pronounce your last name because, you know, I don't know if I should say Fantano like I would, or if I should be like the NPR people, they say like Nicaragua, if I should say Fantano. You know,
you could say Fantano, or you could say, you know, any kind of crazy variation on that you could think of. I mean, you know, at this point, Fantano is fine.
Okay.
From what I understand, it should actually be Fontana, but you know, sort of having relatives that came over through Ellis Island and all that, you know, sometimes last names get kind of changed up.
They decide that they know better. So I guess, Anthony, for anybody who doesn't know you, tell us a little bit basically about who you are, what you do, and what exactly makes you the internet's busiest music nerd.
Just music fanatic, hail from Connecticut, been doing this YouTube thing since 2009, though the needle has existed in some kind of way, shape, or form since 2007. Used to work at a local NPR station, sort of doing a radio show. Maybe would like to get back to doing that one day, but you know, sort of the YouTube channel kind of grew to the point where it just kind of seemed like that's where my main focus should be. And I just do reviews over there of rock, pop, electronic music, hip hop, metal, might be some singer-songwriters, folk music, maybe jazz. Just sort of depends on what's kind of grabbing my attention and the attention of my viewers that week. And yeah, I'm just trying to do as many reviews as possible. And I guess I call myself the busiest because I don't know, I just wanted some weird tagline, and I just thought being busy was maybe the most unimpressive thing that you could be. And, you know, some people might call themselves the best or the smartest or the strongest. At the time, at least, I considered myself to be the busiest because I think I was working 2 part-time jobs at the time that I started the YouTube channel. And so at the time, I thought I was too busy to be doing it. So it was kind of just like a bit of an, you know, inside joke just for me, just to call myself that, and now it's just sort of stuck.
It's like boasting about how many words there are in your novel, you know? Like, yeah, this novel has over 4 million words. That's only 25 cents per thousand.
Or that you're like, I don't know, really good at washing dishes or something like that. Or, you know, I just took, you know, I take my dogs outside all the time. The internet's busiest, making sure his dogs get outside to have a walk and enjoy the weather.
Well, it seems like you have a pretty big following from kind of the metal sort of side of things. Is that your background? I mean, I know you have very eclectic taste, but is that kind of like, was that your first love, or have you picked that up along the way?
Metal was definitely a big obsession for me in high school. Then I kind of got into punk. And then from there, I got really big into singer-songwriters, and then I kind of got into indie rock and pop and jazz in college, and then I ended up kind of circling back around to metal back when like in the mid and late 2000s when sludge metal and doom metal and that sort of thing was like getting really big, and drone metal. And Sun was still like incredibly popular in terms of like people looking for new records from them. So you know, I've kind of started at metal in high school in terms of like a certain genre obsession, and have sort of circled back around to it in my adulthood.
Cool. Well, we've got some questions coming in, so that's cool. We'll get to those in 1 second. Keep the questions coming though. Wanted to ask you real quick, I know you have a live event coming up. Can you talk about what that is? And I guess I'm curious, I've seen you post about these on Instagram and stuff. What exactly happens at an intimate evening with Anthony Fantano?
I haven't talked too much publicly about what exactly goes on at these things because I kind of want people to come in and be surprised. I mean, there was Well, I think for one of my first shows that I ever did, I walked up on stage and I had a guitar sitting there, and I went to play it and it was completely untuned. And then in front of the crowd for like maybe a minute or so, I painstakingly tuned the guitar. And as soon as the guitar was tuned and I played it, and I sort of confirmed with everybody in the crowd that it sounded good, I just quickly unplugged it and threw it back in the case. And then I kind of stood up.
Took their money and went home.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I sort of it's kind of a combination between what I might do in my letter from a fan videos or my question comment videos, where I'm kind of talking about a recent event or just maybe a general music topic, and you know, just trying to facilitate some kind of serious discussion about that. And then I will also you know, embark upon a bunch of silly things as well, like during one of my last shows that I just did this past week, I read a bit of fan fiction that someone wrote about me, which I had a friend of mine sort of illustrate pictures to. And every time I do that sort of bit, people go absolutely insane, because the fan fiction is so outlandish.
Sounds like it could go in some weird directions that I don't think I want to talk about.
It does always go in weird directions, these live sets. And sort of what I end up talking about really sort of depends on what happened that week and where I am. I did a series of shows in Australia last year, and I kind of tailored a bunch of segments to you know, the Australian music scene for those shows that I had done over there. When I had done some New York events late last year, that new War on Drugs, Mark Kozelek song where he was sort of breaking the balls of the people in the war on drugs. That song had just come out, so that was kind of a topic to talk about. This past week, I was talking about Tidal and music streaming services during one of my segments for the show. So, you know, it's a mix of kind of stuff that is funny, stand-up-ish, and then there are also segments that are kind of based on, you know, recent musical events. And I usually stick around and do a Q&A immediately afterwards, and then, you know, I'll stay, hang out at the merch table and just kind of take pictures, shake hands, meet as many people as I can who, you know, just want to stick around. And it kind of just becomes this moment where I can, you know, meet a lot of the people who watch the show just face to face, and, you know, which is always entertaining for me.
Let's get into the viewer questions. So first one from DF Ross. Most annoying cliche, musically, lyrically, that you see in music today?
I mean, it still kind of happens today, though it's not like the most prevalent thing that I come across today. But I kind of have to maybe stop myself and sort of tell myself not to be so cynical. But whenever there's like a lot of lyrics sort of centering around the eyes, it really sort of bugs me, maybe just a little bit. Like, oh, I'm looking in your eyes, or there's stars in your eyes, or, you know, realize the lies, or, you know, just like a lot of focus on the eyes, you know, which are just like an organ that you see things with. You know, looking into someone's eyes doesn't necessarily, you know, tell you everything about them.
They're the window to the soul.
You know, I do understand. I do understand that, and you know, I sort of get the poetic imagery that some people might be trying to pull together, but I don't know. I mean, there's just a lot of bad lyrics about eyes. I'll just say that. There's a lot of bad lyrics about eyes. Eyes conceptually probably aren't a bad thing to write lyrics about, but maybe they're an obvious thing, and that's why a lot of people who aren't good lyricists sort of, you know, center around them or focus on them.
All right. Well, how about a question from an anonymous user? What's the type of music that you enjoy that most people may not realize you enjoy?
Type of music that I enjoy that I
feel like it's probably a tough one because you kind of like everything.
Thanks to a music teacher of mine, I had a bit of an obsession for a moment with just like klezmer and folk music from like the Eastern Bloc. There was actually a band around at the time, an American band featuring the ex-drummer of Neutral Milk Hotel, called the Hawk and Hacksaw, that were very active around this time that I was kind of finding out about this stuff, and they were playing that very same music and making trips over there to like Turkey and places like that to sort of learn more from musicians who lived in these places to make this music. Artists like Taraf de Hayduk's, for example, fantastic, like amazing musicians. A lot of them consider themselves, at least from what I understand, I could be totally wrong on this, gypsies in the band. And, they're just like fiery, like amazing players in this group. And, they just, not only are they fantastic standalone players, but they perform incredibly well as a band. So while I haven't talked about it much in recent videos or anything like that, there was a time when I was pretty obsessed.
Question about the radio side of things from an anonymous user. I'll be interning at my city's PBS member station this summer and would like to hear more about your experience at your local NPR station and public broadcasting in general.
I don't know how restrictive things can be at wherever this person is from in terms of their public radio station. I mean, the station that I interned at in Hartford, WNPR, great station. They produce a lot of local content. However, they have done stuff like made trips over to DC, where they're recording like a lot of the big, huge national syndicated shows, and these places really run like clockwork. There are a lot of levels to the point where, you might actually be influencing anything that goes out on the air. While my station was the biggest station in Connecticut and we had a lot of great local content that we were making, I was producing stuff, that week that was going out on the air in terms of like audio editing. And, it only took me a little while to pull together some demos for a music show, show them to the general manager, and he liked them. And then we turned that into like a podcast that was going up on the website. And after a handful of months of proving that I could do that on a weekly basis, it turned into a half-an-hour length show on the air. After that, I had gotten a small position doing some weekend announcing over there. I mean, even if the station is big and it's nationally known and, there are a lot of people employed there, how far you end up moving in the organization is going to depend on how much work you put in and how much talent you can show them, and how willing you are to sort of, just grab a hold of the ropes and learn them, and just ask questions and be curious and just show that you're actually interested in what's going on in the station and that you're emotionally invested in what's going on in the station. That at least has been my experience. The people over at the station, while I'm not, employed there now, they were a big influence on me to do what I'm doing now on YouTube. Even though I had a radio show going and, I had a podcast going on WNPR, they were, the news director, John Dankowski, and one of the producers over there at the time, George Goodrich, was pretty adamant about recommending that I start a blog or a website as well to sort of go along with my radio show, which sort of influenced me to get a little bit more involved in the online music community and sort of take the time to learn what exactly is going on in the music world outside of sort of the NPR bubble. Eventually that kind of gave way to the YouTube channel. So even if you don't end up at this NPR station fully employed, just being around such a kind of creative media company can most definitely influence what you do if you do kind of take what you're doing into some kind of online venture.
Well, great question to follow up on that from another anonymous user. Do you see YouTube channels like yours as replacing radio as a music discovery vehicle or as a supplement to radio?
I just kind of see it as a supplement. I don't think, there are some great music-based radio shows out there that I don't see a YouTube channel out there that could replace it. Like, for example, Afropop Worldwide, who do a fantastic job of finding pop music from all over the world and bringing it to the NPR airwaves. You know, there's no YouTube station there's no YouTube channel that's doing exactly what Afropop Worldwide is doing. I kind of just see me as another drop in the bucket of which we are all drops of just, you know, one more music publication. I just happen to be sort of YouTube based. I don't see myself as a replacement for anybody. I'm just trying to be, you know, competition, you know, and just another avenue with a certain taste and a certain style and a certain delivery, really.
Well, question from Curtis Park that has been on the top of my mind. Why do you always tweet good morning?
Because I just want to tell everybody good morning. Just, you know, I just want to start the day just on a positive note. That's what I want to do.
I like it. Anonymous user wants to know, do you think that the mainstream will see a resurgence in hard rock music in the near future?
I think everything kind of has its cycles in terms of relevancy. Right now, the rock music is pretty, like, just non-existent when it comes to the mainstream. I mean, there are a few exceptions, like maybe if you would even consider the 1975 rock music. You know, it's certainly pop rock. I wouldn't say the guitar has disappeared from the mainstream at all. You know, there are plenty of pop songs out there that feature guitar at some point, but, you know, as far as like a hard, aggressive, rocking sound, you know, nu metal has sort of come and passed, and, you know, grunge has sort of come and passed. You know, I think it's going to sort of be twofold. We're going to need musicians who are invested in rock music and want to come together with a new sound and a new trend for people to gravitate toward. And then it's also going to be the audience. I mean, you know, people are actually going to have to be receptive to it, because I don't think it's necessarily for a lack of new ideas or anything like that. I mean, there are at least a handful of rock bands that I can name that I think have a very progressive, futuristic, risk-taking sound. You know, bands like Liturgy, or I've been listening to a lot of Battles lately, and I always consider their sound to be kind of forward-thinking. But you know, I just think what's going on in electronic music and hip-hop right now, you know, for whatever reason, because it's really hard to predict trends, and I enjoy a lot of it myself, but it just seems to be capturing more ears and capturing more imaginations than what a lot of underground rock music is doing right now. But again, you know, trends kind of come and go, and you know, eventually what we're seeing right now in terms of popular music, mainstream culture, is going to give way to something else.
Another question from an anonymous user. What bands from Russia do you like?
I know there are a couple that I probably found out about in my college days when looking into some of those Eastern Bloc bands. But I mean, as far as like what's the best new Russian punk band or like, you know, pop act, I mean, you know, there hasn't been like a huge Russian presence in the American music mainstream for years, since like that Tattoo duo.
I was just going to say, what are you talking about? Tattoo is at the top of the charts still, right?
Yeah. But geez, I'm trying to think, like, you know, there are some countries that, because there's a language barrier, I know so little about what's going on over there in terms of the music scene. But I think kind of the next step that the internet needs to take in terms of musical discovery is to somehow break that wall down. A friend of mine, and also because, you know, I've just been seeing some buzz about it from a few popular songs, has been turning me on to some Japanese and Korean rap artists. Also on a Hulu right now, there's like this Korean pop music show where you can kind of hear the latest in Korean pop music. and it's kind of like a stage show, and they perform live on the show. And I think people they have some kind of rating system. I can't tell what they're saying or what they're doing, but you know, there's like a host of the show, and in between each performance they kind of have a board with all the people who are performing on the board, and I think they're rating them somehow. And you know, some of them are more hip hop oriented, some of them are more pop oriented. One song in particular was kind of like felt like a 90s R&B tune to me in terms of the melody. I think in terms of what Americans are listening to right now and what Americans find pleasing to the ear in terms of what pop music should be, some of these Korean and Japanese rappers seem to really be gravitating toward that sound and kind of mastering it. You know, I think it's only going to be a matter of time before some of these artists blow up over here. There's this one artist whose name is CL. She has this track out called The Baddest Female. And the video that she has for this song is like just as outlandish, expensive, and as illustrious as any rap video that anybody's making over here. And the flow that she has on the song and the beat that she has on the song, it's like an absolute banger, and it hits hard, and it's like really visceral. And it's kind of catchy too.
I'm a huge fan of hers. I think she has that kind of like bad bitch vibe that works in a way that most of those like K-pop girls, they just don't really have that, and that seems to be what American audiences respond to.
For sure, you know, and there's this other kid, Keith Ape, who kind of has that song that sounds like a total ripoff of that OG Mako song, You Guessed It. I actually like both tracks, although Mako seems to be pretty mad that Mr. Ape has blatantly ripped off his song, which, you know, he definitely has. You know, with artists like that who have shown that they can pretty much remake a song and have it be just as entertaining as the original, if not more entertaining, because there are some people who are gravitating toward his version a little bit more. You know, it's only going to be a matter of time before he's putting out original material that's going to grab the attention of Americans as well. You know, I always thought that and not that the UK hasn't had its moments in the sun in terms of hip hop. I mean, you know, The Streets was really fantastic in the 2000s. You know, but because of the lack of a language barrier, I always thought the UK might be first to sort of explode in the US in terms of an overseas presence in hip hop. And you know, some of these Korean and Japanese artists are kind of convincing me that it might actually be the East where we might see like a really big blow up of in terms of like hip hop artists catching on over here.
So question from an anonymous user, Weird Vibes on MTV was a good experience, question mark. So that sounds like you were on MTV. Could you explain what that was and tell us if you enjoyed it?
My friend Shirley Braha, who right now currently owns Marnie the dog, that is her dog, and she runs the Instagram account for this beautiful old dog whose tongue hangs right out of her mouth, and she's a wonderful little puppy. And she takes tons of pictures with this dog in just funny positions or funny, you know, places. And this dog is so adorable that, you know, she only needs to walk somewhere within the vicinity of a celebrity, and this incredibly famous person will run over and be like, "That is the cutest dog I've ever seen." And then she'll like take 5 pictures with this person. There was even like a whole page devoted to this dog on a People magazine in one particular issue. And she used to run a New York-based kind of local television show called New York Noise, where she would just feature local acts and you know, just talk about up-and-comers in New York City. And, you know, she was doing interviews and producing the show and getting, you know, guest hosts on the show. And she essentially just kind of took that very same format to MTV for a little bit and called it Weird Vibes. And she was just a big fan of me and my show, and she just invited my roommate, Mr. Calciucesta, on to guest host one episode.
So was it a good experience?
Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty good experience. Shirley is just, you know, a friend, and sort of going down there, It didn't feel like I was dealing with MTV or anything like that. You know, there was no boardroom of people or anything, you know, overseeing what exactly was going on with the show or what I was going to do. It was just, you know, she was the only person I was really dealing with, you know. However, whatever the approach MTV was taking with her show at the time, it was, you know, pretty hands off, and they just kind of, you know, let her do whatever she was going to do. You know, I think it was kind of MTV's attempt at kind of really, I guess, trying to connect with the indie crowd, and Shirley seemed like an avenue for doing that. So they kind of, you know, gave her full creative control over the show in terms of what happened on it and what songs she played and music videos and the guests that she had on. So, I mean, yeah, it was just kind of like, you know, hanging out with a friend, and it wasn't exactly, you know, silly or professional or big budget, or, I mean, it wasn't exactly professional or big budget or anything like that. But, you know, it was just kind of silly and just a fun time.
Cool. Another question from DF Ross. Other than Twin Shadow, who else have you seen fall from grace recently? Who did you used to admire greatly and now consider falling?
I mean, it's kind of hard to say total fall from grace, because, I mean, I don't know. There's some artists that there was a moment where I was pretty unimpressed with Cage the Elephant, for example, and their latest album I actually thought was actually great. So, you know, I think I think, you know, if I am reviewing your stuff and I'm trying it out, even if I don't like it, there's at least maybe possibly like a glimmer of hope somewhere for me that, you know, one day down the road you might make a record I'm interested in. But as far as like another artist whose newer work I used to love their older stuff, and now as far as like 2 records down the road, I'm not really liking where they're going at all. Maybe the new Foxygen album as well, which was incredibly long and incredibly, just, at least for me, unfulfilling. But yeah, that would be another example.
Another anonymous user, how do you organize your vinyl collection, and at what point do you decide to keep a record or let it go? You can't keep all of them, can you?
I mean, there's some records that I trade. I guess it just sort of depends on whether or not I find myself, excuse me, coming back to it. There's a handful of records from when I was first like vinyl collecting and CD collecting too that I sort of, you know, regret having given up. But as far as organization, I mean, it's just alphabetical. Just alphabetical. It's the easiest way. Just alphabetical.
That's it.
I can't see myself doing it any other way, honestly. Like, you know, this just seems like the most obvious thing.
Another anonymous question. Do you think that rap artists today tend to toot their own horn a bit much?
Yeah, I mean, sort of bragging. The thing about hip hop music is that from its earliest days, there's been a serious sense of competition in the art form, you know, because you're not really talking about you know, somebody like Drake who has producers and records and, you know, a huge label behind him. You know, you're talking about a DJ and maybe a series of different rappers or MCs coming on the mic to kind of outdo one another. You know, hip hop, which we know today is like this commercial force in mainstream music, is born out of that trend, you know? So yeah, there are a lot of rappers that toot their own horn. I mean, you know, the music, the art form was kind of born out of that. You know, rapping was something that, you know, is kind of born out of competition. You have battle rap kind of making a comeback right now in terms of an online presence. Because, you know, people are sort of interested in that competition of who is the best rapper, who is the best MC. You know, there are some rappers out there who are tooting their own horn that, I mean, it kind of bores me because I think they're kind of illegitimately tooting their own horn. Like, you may think you're the best, but I don't, you know, so any attempt they make at bragging just sort of, you know, goes in one ear and out the other. But I think there are plenty of artists out there in the underground that focus on other things, whether it be kind of social, larger socio-political topics or something like that. I mean, you know, the new Kendrick Lamar album has been pretty fantastic in terms of that. You know, hip-hop has matured a lot in terms of a genre. I mean, don't expect to hear the most creative artists in the mainstream, but that's kind of the case with every genre of music. The biggest, most popular artists out there aren't always necessarily those who are bringing alternative ideas and playing with an alternative sound. While there is some great music out there in the mainstream, it's often the underground where you're going to hear like a lot of weird, oddball, left field, risk-taking stuff. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to try to find the band out there that has like absolutely no followers or listeners whatsoever. There are plenty of artists out there that are doing it independent, and while they may not be huge, they have a kind of a sweet little cult following that love their sound and love their direction. For example, I would check out the rappers over at a Hellfire Club, people like Open Mike Eagle, Milo, No Can Do, Bus Driver, who had a new album out last year that I thought was fantastic. Just really kind of creative, left field, kind of nerdy, oddball hip hop that doesn't necessarily talk about the braggadocious stuff.
Maybe there's some modest rappers that are like, I'm not saying I'm the best rapper. I'd like to think I'm in the top 50%, but I'll leave that up to you to decide.
I mean, they're not really arguing that point as much as they are just like, for example, like on the new Bus Driver album, there was one track in particular where he's rapping about, sort of not being sort of a dependable counterpart in a relationship. And it's kind of like a really emotional, sort of self-effacing song. He's not rapping about being a rapper, though there are moments where he does that. And there's one funny moment, I believe, on the second track on the album where he's kind of rapping about how people talk about hip hop in the grander sense, and sort of in a tongue-in-cheek way asks, like, does hip hop have the body to pull that dress off? What does hip hop check in the gender box? Just funny little observations like that. Meanwhile, dudes like Milo are constantly making references to famous philosophers. Guys like Open Mike Eagle are just incredibly funny, witty, down to earth. There's one track in particular off of his new LP where he puts out a line about checking he's talking about like spying in the NSA, and then he ends the line saying something about the Constitution's terms of service agreement. So just some interesting wordplay coming from these guys, and they're just kind of talking about topics that you wouldn't necessarily hear in a hip hop song. Also Death Grips as well. Though I don't totally consider them traditionally to be hip hop, they are most definitely a hip hop act in a sense, and they make this incredibly noisy, grimy music that can at times be braggadocious, but is more sort of aggressive and angry and sort of in your face in the way that a metal or a punk song would be.
Got time for a couple more questions here. One that I'm also curious about. Do you see the needle drop growing beyond YouTube, maybe onto other media platforms such as Twitch or radio?
I actually am getting my website redesigned right now, and once I do that, I'm going to be bringing on some more writers, and I'm actually hoping to start doing live segments once again, whether that be maybe on a platform such as Twitch. I have had an offer from an internet radio station to do something with them as well, which I'm kind of still considering. I just kind of have to get this website thing done first before I sort of continue or consider branching out beyond YouTube, because this new site is really going to kind of be the hub where I kind of promote and advertise and share and disseminate all of these new things that I may be doing and trying. But I already put out so much video content. I want to create a hub on the internet where I can kind of adequately organize these videos of all these different genres that I'm reviewing, and just kind of give people a solid archive that they can kind of sift through to sort of, find out about past albums that I've loved and other records that they may be curious about, whatever my thoughts are on them. And, from there I can kind of, talk about maybe these live shows that I'm doing, and do more editorial content, and, potentially do some internet live streaming events as well.
How long does it take maybe seconds, listening to a song to know whether you'll like it or not?
I kind of decide whether or not I like something really quickly, but in terms of like, actually making a video about it and reviewing it, I kind of have to listen to it way more times than whatever my, initial reaction is, because I kind of have to think about how the song works and try to get into the details and sort of come together with a concise, accurate, but also simultaneously like entertaining description of whatever is going on. And sometimes through that process, I realize, well, maybe the song isn't so bad, or maybe I really liked it, or if I started off liking it, I realize that I don't really care for it that much. An initial reaction is cool, but I've found that at least for me, not all the time, but at least enough times to go through the process. Sometimes I end up feeling a different way about an album or a song after I've pretty much finished the review than I did when I first started, writing and listening.
Okay, about two more questions here. This is one that I'm also interested in. What do you think about this year's Coachella lineup? In particular, is the DJ scene reaching critical mass in the festival world?
I don't know. I mean, whether or not it reaches critical mass is really going to depend on whether or not people continue to go to Coachella if they feel like, there are too many DJs and there aren't enough bands that they actually want to see. They're completely EDM-based festivals that have way more than, like a DJ to, live instrumentation ratio than Coachella, and they're incredibly popular as well. I think, eventually EDM is going to give way to some other trend. But don't necessarily expect that trend to be something more preferable than EDM. It could be something that I think some people are sort of looking at this whole EDM thing and they're just looking at their watches and waiting for it to be over. Personally, I don't really mind some of it, and there are some and there are plenty of DJ sets that I'd be perfectly happy to stand in front of, because I mean, I don't know how all these people are doing their thing, but there are creative ways to DJ, and some of these DJs are, actually fantastic producers and amazing artists in their own right. While I don't really see EDM as getting any more popular than it has now, I mean, it's kind of captured the hearts and minds of this new young generation. I don't think it's going to sort of move beyond that in terms of influence or anything like that. I think there are a lot of older people that just don't want to have anything to do with it. As long as EDM continues to be the soundtrack to people's good time, it's going to continue to exist. A lot of these people go to these festivals just to have a good time and party and just, see and enjoy the company of other people. DJs sort of are really good at sort of facilitating that good time. It sort of allows people to have some music on, but, that is really visceral and hits hard and, sounds like a party and feels like a party. And that's, really what some people are at these festivals for. So I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing. I mean, yeah, it's going to die out one day, just like everything does. But it's not anything I'm sort of, sitting on the edge of my seat for.
Last question from Jeff Haga. How much time do you spend editing and filming per day?
I am going to shoot 2 videos after this, and then after that, I'm going to edit one of them. I mean, editing and shooting is something I'm doing every day. And how long I'm doing it sort of depends on the video and depends on the album, depends on the artist, like with my Kendrick Lamar review, it took me a couple of days to sort of get that review together because of how long the review was and at least me personally, how I felt that I needed to intensively listen to the new album itself. Some records are shorter, or what makes them good or what makes them bad, in my opinion, is kind of very obvious and sort of hits you right away. And there isn't a lot in terms of intricacy to the record. So sort of explaining its appeal or its lack thereof is kind of easier. And, you know, honestly, like, while I listen to a lot of music, I love a lot of music, I hate a lot of music, not every record really ends up, you know, stirring my emotions to the point where I have a lot to say about it. Some albums I'm just kind of on the fence with, and, you know, I can't really muster more than just, like, you know, 3 or 4 minutes of speech on the album for whatever reason. Though, you know, for some people that would even be way too long to talk about a record anyway. You know, I've always found it easier to just go on and on and on and on and on, as you already know, because I haven't shut up since we've done this interview.
Cool. Well, I think we are about out of time, but thanks for joining us, and thanks to everybody who asked a question. Very cool to have you on CreativeLive. Instagram is @Fantano or @Fantano if you're from NPR. Twitter is The Needle Drop or theneedledrop.com. And thanks for joining us.